No, ini bara.
Welcome. Basically, lot of lala me along is cool, man. That I can really relax.
What the madam?
Yeah, that's
what the madam?
Yeah.
Let them do somebody.
That's right.
Grand villa.
That's fine.
Slowly. Yes. No.
Yeah, actually, a lot of people are basically me along because they relax. So it's basically that I can have this kind of
Nina ni say what? Nidia Nena Grand Villa is the best guest house in the Gambia.
Beji andika Grand Villa Guest House. Na labungol bebe senyaring adum na bungol bebe nyarandiring coming ibe la fila ila suwe taranyame. Ntel Grand Villa na kiliano la lafino wale mukangwati ntel kang. Na ye sabati Grand Villa yela kodo na fa kalamuta.
Oh man, this is like a paradise.
I know.
I so much love this place.
Thank you.
Trust me, I love this place.
You can move somebody and watching what? Kapin Jang and no to Gambia. Grand Villa.
I tell you. I love this place. Okay. I love this place, man. Oh yeah.
Ni lefta na kuo keso sotola. Futama Oljuntum Paradise Estate. Mbaya kumandiroke 7527-218. Wale futana website auto www.grandvillaguesthouse.com. Grand Villa Guest House.
Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
Yara nyilla domoro kadiyate
boy jannon sikes restaurant
e say nakko be ninna dimbal nimbe domoro kala janno
domoro seneyata adiyata topotoro fanan kendema bije luntan during tamala abeka domoro ki janni adi manda wala de teka we bijele anim fanan ka fadi jang ikono e fa e ka fa minne ko pastry anim bakery iko fanan be kalele ba de lomba conference lomba workshop lomba ye fo fendil lo dunia kono domoro betama nyillom international o to number 1
amanke ba do la jandama
esa domo jang is atariya
wo mu kubandi
sa na ko sa futandin
oto sa na ko be mu CK's restaurant
ndafa na janna mu yat ni manje dorom bija
aban
CK's restaurant, known for best quality food and customer satisfaction.
Remind him that the last time he sent the money, it was not enough to buy all the provisions.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell him.
Are you guys talking about money transfer to buy provisions?
Yes.
But don't you know about Baluwo?
Baluwo? What is Baluwo?
Baluwo is a service that your son can use to send provisions directly to you guys from the shop. And you don't have to worry about the exchange rate.
Tell me how Baluwo works.
It's very simple.
Just log on to baluwo.com and shop, or download the app on your phone. You can shop on the website or using the app to buy online basic products for your family and friends. With Baluwo, you decide what your money is spent on. Your money, your choice. Buy online products for your family and friends in the Gambia, Senegal, Nigeria or Mali. Baluwo, better than sending money.
Hello and welcome to this special interview. I am Fatou Touré. Of course, today with me I have Mr. Cherno Njie. Cherno is the president of Songhai Development, an Austin-based housing development consultancy firm, and a business executive, a real estate developer, a philanthropist, and to add to his new title, the author of the newly launched book, Sweat is Invisible in the Rain. I must admit, I read the book, not completely, but I think I'll be able to go through some of the details. Mr. Njie, welcome to this special interview.
Thank you, Fatou, for having me.
And first, I must say, I want to congratulate you on the launch of the book. It was a great read, and we have so many people coming through to attend the launching, especially the professors from Nigeria and from America. How do you feel having all those people coming to look at your first memoir?
It was an honor to have so many academics fly in from the United States, from Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, to be part of this launching. Very important work was presented, and there will be a compilation of the essays expanded and formed into another book that's going to be coming out based on this book. So we should look forward to that, and I'm grateful for the attendance of the Gambians, as well as for the superb job that you also did as part of the planning and hosting of the occasion.
Thank you, and it was definitely an honor to host the conference and the book launch as well. But let's start with Cherno Njie. I know a lot of us, when we say Cherno Njie, what we think about first is December 30, and I think there is more to who Cherno Njie is. Let's start with you. Let's start with your background, your upcoming. Where did you come from? How was your growing up like? What is your educational background?
Well, I'm a Banjulian. I was born and raised in Banjul. Grew up in Banjul practically my entire life before moving over to the U.S. I was educated in regular schools in Banjul, Wesley School, Albion School, Crab Island School, went to St. Augustine's, went to sixth form at Gambia High School. It was an idyllic childhood, surrounded by loving parents in a very small compound. Now I say small, but when you're a kid, it's not small.
Yeah.
When I go back and look at the compound, I remember bringing my son years ago to visit, and I said, this is where we grew up. You know, he couldn't believe it because it was so tiny now. I mean, it could fit into my front lawn back in the US. So, but it was close quarters, very loving parents, extended families, relatives. I mean, my father was just open to anybody who comes in. So it was a good childhood.
And then going through your memoir, I specifically, one thing that was remarkable in how you describe what your mom taught you, ngor, and that stand out. I mean, for most of us, that's the cultural upbringing that we all go through, and that makes us who we are today. Let's talk about your mother and your father.
Well, yeah, that was an important part of my education and the transmission of values. Ngor, yar, tegin, jom. Jom especially is my favorite because jom is your own personal dignity, really.
Yeah.
That nobody can take away from you. The way you carry yourself, the way you interact with other human beings should always be in a manner that is admirable, in a manner that preserves your own integrity. No matter what you are, it's not a question of status, it's a question of personal deportment and responsibility. So I learned that as a child and was imbued with those values. I believe that my success and my disposition in life has a lot to do with the transmission of those values, and I still carry them. Hopefully I can transmit them successfully, teach my children those same values.
So you went to high school in the Gambia, and of course started your career at Standard Chartered Bank.
Indeed.
How has that helped to mold you and prepare you for the international world?
Well, I remember after I finished my sixth form, I was given an exam. At the time, Standard Chartered, you take an exam, and I suppose if you pass, you call for an interview. And they gave me the job. It's not like I knew the manager or anybody. It was an exam that we took. And two of my other classmates actually joined me there. So about 2 weeks after we finished the exam, I was working at Standard Bank and worked there for 3.5, 4 years before moving on. While I was there, I had my own side business. I owned a taxi. And they had a driver who drove the taxi. At night I would take it and cruise around and do a little bit of taxiing myself. Wow. So I think I had some sort of entrepreneurial bent early on, and that was helpful. My father also was a shopkeeper. He worked during the colonial days and afterwards at Kingsway store, which was one of the main stores, the department stores in Banjul at the time. So I visited often and admired the work he did.
And how was your transition like going to America? Did you apply to just go to school straight, or was it just like any of us, just to be a normal immigrant, to go and work and start working and save up to go to school? Or did you have an opportunity where your parents were able to pay for you to go to college?
No, my tuition and studies in the US was completely self-financed. No, my parents were not poor, but they were not well off enough to sponsor an education in the US. I saved money that I worked with, and with the taxi was able to get enough to begin. So I had friends in the US. I applied and was admitted and moved on.
And how was school life
Well,
you went straight to Texas?
Straight to Texas, yes.
That was not a typical, that's not a typical area for immigrants to go, right?
Well, perhaps not now, but years ago, there were a few Gambian students there before I came in. So that was the conduit to actually going to Texas. And it was a small town, a fairly small town compared to the rest of Texas. And but I didn't like the town. I spent a year there and decided I was going to move to the University of Texas at Austin, where I graduated from in '87.
And in '87, your first job was an assistant manager in a small printing company.
Small printing company in Austin, and prior to that, when you're in school in America, the good thing is that you do a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
Odd jobs. I worked in a convenience store, for example, as a convenience store clerk. I did jobs trying to sell insurance, for example. Those are not included in the book. It would take a whole lot more to include all of that. But the best thing about America is you learn to do a lot of things, and you learn the work ethic, and you learn to try your hand at various things, and before you settle down to something. So it was a good learning experience all along.
And in 1991, I guess, you started real estate business. Was that your specialty in school?
Well, I started in 92 as with the state of Texas, and in the housing department. This was a federal program that was administered by the state. The process is very elaborate. You look at a piece of property, raw land you purchase, and then you put a team together. You put a team of architects, civil engineers, electrical engineers, MEP, that is mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. You have your landscape architect, you have your lawyer, of course. So you put a team together and you design the project, and you go to a bank and you get financing for a project. So it's a long process that typically, between the time you do your acquisition to the time you lease up, may take 24 months. You know, it's not as long as perhaps you would be in the Gambia, but these are not small projects. These are hundreds of units.
And then looking at what you have done, how would you assess the real estate industry in the Gambia?
Well, I've looked at it recently. As you know, I never contemplated doing anything substantial in this country while Jammeh was in power. I just felt the conditions were not right. Sooner or later, he was going to muscle you in, or get into your business, or compromise you in one way or the other. So it was a risky proposition that I never took. I think it's a vibrant industry. Certainly, there is a lot of land development and a lot of opportunities I see for developing housing, and also for developing perhaps moderate housing for moderate income Gambians.
So for somebody who has been in the real estate industry, and for somebody who has this kind of investment in the U.S., that brings to mind your involvement in the December 30th. What really inspired you? What brought you to something like that? Thinking about the risk involved, going to jail, having to go to prison, and that is something that somebody like you would never even think in a normal situation to get yourself involved. Did you think about all of this risk, and what really motivated the December 30th?
Well, it wasn't a sudden process. I mean, as I stayed on the other side of the Atlantic over the years, you gaze at what's going on in the Gambia. I mean, I've been visiting intermittently, and every time you come, you know, there is a sense of foreboding. There is a sense that, you know, a reign of terror is in place. And over the years, like many other Gambians, have helped to contribute to political parties or online newspapers, financially and otherwise, to help strengthen and to help do a campaign internationally to isolate the regime, to try and make Jammeh change his ways. Over time, it became very frustrating and evident that not much has happened. And so we reached a threshold where there was a breaking point, if you will, where Gambians felt that it was important now to take the next step, which is to forcibly try to remove him.
So in the book, I read how you explained how Njie contacted you. That's Njie Jan. What was your first impression when he put the idea to you?
Well,
did you believe the mission was possible?
Yes, I believe it was possible, but at the time, it was sketchy. I needed more information. And so Njie became a catalyst for getting that necessary information, a plan of action. I was particularly interested in getting the transition plan. after that, what next? Okay, if you succeed, then what?
What?
You know, the aftermath is just as important, if not more, than ending the Jammeh regime. You don't want chaos to ensue. So I was interested in that, and that wasn't fully developed when I entered the game, and that became part of the things that I contributed more of, perhaps, than the military planning, to try and envision what a future Gambia would look like if we succeed.
And then, of course, it didn't succeed, but when you guys, the initial plan, I think you guys got to know that they had an idea about what you guys were up to. And why did you forge ahead knowing that there might be some leakage of information out there?
Well, yes, we knew there was a leak during the execution phase when we were all assembled here. Sane had some information from Senegalese sources that the Gambian authorities knew about our presence here. And in the book, I detailed subsequent research to indicate that actually they knew about this long before. But they didn't know critical elements of the plan. They didn't know the timing of the plan. They didn't know the nature of the attack, how it's going to unfold. Even though it had leaked, we felt there was a reasonable chance that we could still proceed. The option was to withdraw to Dakar and reconfigure the plan and come back. That was an option we considered, but Sane convinced us that we should proceed with the plan. So that's what happened. We did.
And then, of course, on that fateful day, 30th December, the news came out about the attack, and three of your comrades died during the attack. And the biggest critic, the biggest thing that people said was Njie and Njie and Bakan. They took Gambians there to kill them, because the misconception was only 10 men were there to attack the State House.
Well, that is a misperception. It was never intended that 10 men will do a frontal assault on the State House and that would be the end of it. Sane had extensive contacts within the military and within the State House itself. The fact that it failed indicated a massive betrayal. That's the bottom line.
Where do you think the betrayal come from?
Well, people who were playing both sides. In the research I've made subsequent, in one of the chapters where I titled, "Let Me Set the Record Straight," you indicate that we knew that it had leaked as soon as Sane had actually contacted Mbading. Mbading was one of the folks that he had, you know, Buba Sane, we call him Mbading. Mbading was one of the first to basically go to Solbaji and said, I was contacted by Sane. But they didn't take him seriously because they never thought anybody would have the daring to come in here and take on Jammeh. So
Mbading was the one who was the first person to
leak the plan, yes.
To Solbaji. But still, so up to now, I know I had Alaji last week, up to now, we are still not able to establish who were the key, because there were so many names were coming up. People that betrayed, there were so many names coming up. And up to now, we are not able to pinpoint exactly who were involved in the Gambia.
Well, that's true. I mean,
apart from the Njie and Abdullah Job,
there were others who were involved and who were not publicly known. I think we have some idea of who they were, and but you know there is no point in pointing fingers and say this and that. It's enough to say that there was a lot more involvement by senior members whom Sane had contacted. I mean, we had a platoon of men waiting that could have been deployed, perhaps in the initial attack. But that would have meant a change of plans. That anytime you move that many people, you raise suspicion. So they were on standby, ready to fortify and to strengthen the gains had we taken State House. So you know, in hindsight, yes, you can always look at it and say, well, you should have done this or that. But the bottom line is we acted on the best information we had, and if you're betrayed, you're betrayed. There's not much you can do about that.
And then you regrouped in Senegal, and of course you went back to the US, and subsequently you went to prison. Was there at any point where you sat down in the prison room and said you had a point that you have regretted even taking this journey? Because number one, here you are, you know, confined to the four walls of a prison, and of course number two, some members of your group are no more. Was there any point that you thought maybe we should not have done this?
Not at all. I mean, we regrouped in Senegal, and the plan was really to refigure the plan and see what we can do moving forward. It was never, this was the end of it. We've tried once and that's it, let's go home.
Meaning you wanted to go back and do it again?
Of course, of course. To regroup in Dakar was basically to reconfigure, to see what happened and to see how best to execute another plan. And I went back to the US. Barrow, in fact, stayed. I had advised him to stay because we needed somebody in the region. Of course, when I arrived in the US, I was arrested. So did Papa Fall, and ultimately Banka Mani was also arrested. But the plan was to reconfigure how we'll get this done the next time around. I had no regrets. I regretted the loss of life, certainly. But this was a matter of conscience, and regret has no place in a matter of conscience. So we felt like the country was held hostage by Jammeh, and we felt we had an obligation to try to wrest free our country, and that's why we acted.
And people will say, for somebody like you who is so successful in the United States, why would you want to lead a tiny nation like the Gambia?
Well, it wasn't a question of leading a tiny nation. The leadership was not something I sought or wasn't a driving force for my involvement in the plan. That came as a result of my being asked to take on that role. Well, it may be a tiny nation, but a nation held captive. It was my country after all. And I wasn't comfortable just sitting knowing there was something we could do and something that hasn't, well, there have been others who've tried.
Yeah.
But this was an opportunity that we felt could work, and that's why we undertook it.
So reading your book, you talked about how sitting there in 2017, you started writing the book. Mm-hmm. How did that come about?
Well, as you know, I went through a trial mm-hmm. and prison, and getting out of that and rebuilding my life, rebuilding the business, and getting a sense of what had happened, the many stories that had been written about December 30th, about us, our motivations, and what prompted us to do this. I felt it was important that those of us who were directly involved set the record straight. I mean, friends of mine have asked me, you need to do that, and family members too. So I began to write, and hopefully other members of the December 30th will also write their own memoirs, because everybody has a unique opportunity and a unique perspective as to...
That's what Alhaji said, because he told me the way you operated, nobody knew what the other person was doing, because especially when it comes to him and Sane, the military, they just wanted to make sure, if you're dealing with a certain group of people, they don't know who is also on the other side, just to keep it private. So it was interesting to hear from the different people.
Indeed, I mean, the information was compartmentalized for obvious reasons, to maintain secrecy, to make sure that we are not compromised. I mean, obviously, the downside of that is that you don't get a full picture of the whole thing. But it was on a need-to-know basis, and I knew enough. I didn't have to know every contact that Sane had in the military. Alhaji was here 2 months before doing reconnaissance and extraordinary stuff on the ground in terms of getting preparation, receiving the arms and doing other things that as a prelude to the attack.
And then talking about your comrades, Jadinyas, Lamin Sane and Njaga Jany, I'm sure you had interaction with all of them. If you would describe any of these gentlemen.
Well, these were all forthright men of tremendous honor and a sense of patriotism. I mean, I met Njaga initially, the first one among the lot in Austin. He stayed at my home, and we had an opportunity to interact, to talk about our goals, to talk about our vision for the country. He was an extraordinary human being, a patriotic Gambian, was willing to put everything on the line and ask for nothing in return. They didn't want to take any positions. You know, Sane likewise, a true patriot, wasn't interested in positions. Judging us the same thing. I mean, I remember telling Sane and Njaga, look, you're not going to leave me here alone. Yeah. I need to look around and see faces that I recognize, that I trust. You know, and that's part of the reason I accepted the position to lead the transitional government, because I felt they were putting their lives on the line. The least I could do is to join them on the ground and to do the best that I can.
And then you were even on the ground during the operation. I wondered, without a lot of any military training.
Well, I knew how to shoot a rifle.
You're from Texas, right?
I'm from Texas, that's sure. I own a handgun, and so I'm not unfamiliar with weapons. But this was a military type operation. It was tense more than scary, because the anticipation was so thick that I don't think I had any fear or time to be fearful. It was fast-paced activity, moving in and out. As you know, we tried disciplinary action or considered high risk, you know, and I didn't know, well, initially, why did they put me here? But I learned later on that they considered me high risk because one of the things the guard asked me was whether I could fly a plane. I said, no, I can't fly a plane, because they thought, well, he could have a rescue mission here, or they also asked me if I knew any agents of Jammeh who might be in prison who could do me harm. I mean, so it was partly precautionary, partly because I was a high-risk convict, so they put me in special isolation.
And then you started writing this book. Let's talk about the book. Writing this book, the title itself, Sweat is Invincible in the Rain.
Well, sweat is invisible in the rain is actually one of proverb that says "Nyahadu fenchip tau."
Oh, Nyahadu fenchip tau.
You know, and what it signifies is that striving and working, not all of it is visible. You know, there are many people who struggle to change circumstances in this country who are not visibly known. The activities and the work they did was not visible to the general public. And I think it came from that, and to just say that this was an effort that many people tried to change over a long period of time. So when we look at it, the regime ended by 1,000 cuts, basically, through the efforts of many people. So that's the title.
And of course, the book is not just about the December 30th. It's about your entire life, your family background. I saw pictures of your childhood, of course, your family, and then your business career, and December 30th as well.
Yes, the book is divided more or less into three parts. The initial part is my early childhood, schooling in Banjul, and life in the Gambia, basically. I mean, how I grew up as free-range kids. We used to just truck around town and do our thing, and without anybody worrying about a child being kidnapped or anything like that. compared to the US, where you hang on to your kids and don't let them out of your sight. So it's a big contrast. Later, the book, the middle part, talks really about me building a career in the US. I decided to become an American and to stay there and work there and make a life out of there. And I gained some measure of success financially and otherwise, being able to reach my goals. But my gaze was always on the Gambia, across the Atlantic. It was as if something was pulling you back. You know, you couldn't just ignore it because it was there, even if you didn't pay attention to the news. Now and then something strange happens in Gambia. So.
And then, of course, after trying to topple the Jammeh's government in 2016, a coalition government was able to do that. How was the feeling like when you heard that Jammeh lost the election? And of course, he accepted the results.
Well, I was in prison at the time that this thing happened, and there was euphoria.
Did you believe it when you that he accepted the results?
Yes, my wife sent me a message saying that he accepted the results. It was too good to be true. And actually, some of my cellmates who knew about my record saw it in the news. They said, well, what's going on in Gambia? So there was some euphoria. And then, of course, a few days later, it was dashed, and he rescinded his acceptance of the election results, and then plunged the country into chaos, basically.
Yeah, and then of course when you came out, after some time you visited the country. When you came and you visited the Gambia, is this the new Gambia? We call it the new Gambia. Is this the new Gambia you were trying to create when you and your members tried to topple Jammeh's government?
It's a work in progress, and certainly the freedoms that we enjoy now were unknown under Jammeh, and you can see the flowering of freedom. Look at the demonstration yesterday.
Yeah.
So the citizenry really is mobilized now to hold the government accountable. There have been major missteps in my view. The coalition agreement should have been implemented to the T. It was a good document, a lot of good things about collective leadership, a lot of good things about reform and renewal, a lot of things about the restructuring of the state machinery. All of those things, unfortunately, were not done or slow-walked. So I think it's a major failure of the coalition government, and the failure really applies to all of them.
Where did you think it went wrong, though? At what point did you think it went wrong?
Well, I think personal and party interest, in my view, appeared to have been the driving force. You know, certain elements felt, well, Barrow is a Barrow, and you know, we've all had that.
Yeah.
And Barrow is a Barrow meant they thought Barrow would implement an agenda perhaps more in line with their own goals and aspirations than sticking to the letter of the MOU. You know, of course, this 3-year, 5-year controversy also has emerged now to be a very big thing. You know, had they stuck to the agreement, fidelity to that MOU, I think we would have been in a better place now than we were. And the reforms are not as extensive as we might have expected. The security sector reform, I think, should have been more vigorously pursued than we have seen so far. So the president has lacked focus, and part of that is because he wants to run, he wants to succeed himself. Anytime you make that a priority, well, other things suffer, and what suffers is the national interest.
So when we had a new government, there was so many goodwill towards the Gambia. In fact, you know, the EU Gambia, the donor conference held in Brussels they almost had people pledging up to 1.6 billion. So do you think the goodwill towards Gambia is still there? There's still chance for us to be able to reposition ourselves and get all those goodwill, or do you think the window is already closed?
Well, the window is not completely closed, but it is closing. As you know, these were pledges. Pledges are just that, they're pledges. And they're conditional on certain criteria. And the government has received, according to finance minister, around 140 million.
10%.
And that is a paltry sum compared to what was pledged.
Yeah.
And the goodwill is still there, but I think it is eroding. And Barrow seems to lack focus.
What does he need to do? A lot of people say this, but what does he need to do now to be able to get back to do this and get back to the table and get all this goodwill? Because these are, in fact, as part of the NDP, most of it was put around this money that was pledged.
Well, I think what he needs to do now, if I were advising him, is to announce to the nation that he's not running again. And to bring in place, to put in place people who can support him and help him achieve that agenda. That, I think, will be a tremendous contribution to reassuring Gambians that this guy is there for them and not for himself. If he were to announce that he's not running again, I think that it will go a long way towards allaying the fears that he is trying to succeed himself. He's already announced he's forming a party.
He's forming a political party.
That's what I'm saying. Well, he doesn't have to run. He can form a party and not run. He's not being forced to run. So my advice to him is to announce he's not running. And if he doesn't want to step down, that should be actually the goal, to bring in a new team. It's not a question of personality per se. It's a question of the policies and the people that you bring in to focus on what needs to be done. He hasn't done that.
And a lot of people say the political tension in the country is just crazy. It seems like every day everybody is politicking instead of doing something. Why do you think the political space is so toxic like this?
Well, look, politicians do politics. That's what they do.
Yeah.
To expect that they will not do politics, I think, is asking too much. But you can do politics and do it in the right way and still advance the national interest. There will be time for electioneering, but this is the time to focus on the key issues facing this country. I mean, look at the tragedy we've seen with these kids getting in the boat. I mean, for me, that is the more telling rebuke that you can find, because what the kids are saying is they have no confidence in the future, so much so that they would rather risk their lives than stay in the Gambia. That should be a wake-up call for every Gambian who can do something about it.
So I know the CRC has presented the first draft, the draft of the Constitution. What's your assessment of what you saw so far?
Well, it's generally a good draft, and it has, as you know, one of the major things that are being debated now is the secularity, the secular provision that was not in the Constitution. And it's obvious why it wasn't in the Constitution. It's because of the provision dealing with Sharia law makes this a non-secular constitution. Now you can argue that, well, the 1970 Constitution was also non-secular because of the Qadi courts, and you would be right. But just because it wasn't there doesn't mean it shouldn't be. My own view is that it actually should be there. We should stipulate that it is a secular constitution, it's a secular state. And what secularity means is that it's a separation of religion and state, and that you wouldn't privilege one religion over another. I'm a Muslim, but I respect the rights of minorities. Christians should feel to be part of this country in the same way that I feel I am part of this country. So I support the addition of secularity in the Constitution. Now, there's been a lot of confusion about what that means. I've heard people say, well, it encourages homosexuality, it does this or does. I don't think that is accurate. So there's a lot of misinformation. Perhaps we need to do a lot more public education on what this actually means. We've existed for a long time as Muslims and Christians with harmony, without any trouble. So there is elements within the Muslim community, to be quite frank, who have their own version of Islam, and who want to impose that on us, the rest of us, and other people who may not think the way they do. So I think it's a very delicate matter, but we ought to be able to reach some consensus and live in harmony and respect each other's religion and each other's contribution to this society. And
what's your take on the 50 plus, for elections and also? I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing to have 50 plus one, and to run elections to the level of president without that, I think, does not build consensus. We need to have a second round if nobody wins 50 plus one, and go for a runoff, And one of the ironies is that the 3 years judge, if Barrow were to step down now and elections were held, they will be held on the laws that Njie had passed, unless the legislature changed those, and I'm not sure that is likely. So what you may have, you have two bad options. One, Barrow flout the rules as they are in terms of reneging on his 3 years. The other one is we hold elections under laws that allow for less than 50 plus one. And that's the argument that I like to put out there, and with so many other people. What if Barrow agrees to the 3 years? Now what happens? What happens is we call for election in the next 3 months, and we're going to election with the same laws that we had before. And with the way we have so many political parties being registered now, what happens then? We're going to elect somebody without even, maybe let's say, less than 40% of the votes. And is that what we're looking forward to? Our electoral laws are the same. Everything else is the same. Are we prepared to go to election in 3 months? That is the argument. Well, it's doubtful whether the IEC can conduct elections within that period. Yeah. And what about voter registration? Have they been doing any voter registration? Yeah. How many people would the diaspora be able to vote in that? And even are they able to, the biggest argument over the years is the Jammeh administration bloating the voter register, registering non-Gambians. That has been the claim that the opposition had said all these years. So we still have the same voter registration. Yeah, for practical reasons, I think either Barrow announces, if I were him, I would announce I'm not running. Yeah. Take yourself out of the equation. That will diffuse a lot. Would you think that will solve the problem? It will help. It would diffuse the situation a lot, because the animus seems to be, well, the anger is directed at him. And he has been irresponsible in saying, whether you like it or not, I'm going to serve 5 years. Now, that is inflaming the issue. I think a president shouldn't talk like that. When you made a pledge, if there is reason, you think you need to serve 5 instead of 3, let's have a dialogue about it. Address the nation, bring people together and say, these are the reasons why I think I need an extra 2 years. If Barrow had focused on these reforms, like a laser, bring in the people who can help him, unlike the folks who hang around him, I think the Gambian people will say, you know what, maybe he has a point. Let's give him an extra 2 years. He's doing a good job. These reforms need to be seen through. But Barrow and his people will tell you, I went to, the Constitution gives me a 5-year mandate. And when I was swearing in, I hold the Constitution. It was... I have my own views, which is that we don't. But let's look at it seriously. So what happens if especially we know the Gambian army, I mean, a lot of the time people have described the army as being used by politicians in the past. So if you're looking at downsizing the army, wouldn't that be a cause for concern somewhere else? What do you do with these people that you're letting go? Well, you do it in an organized, systematic way. You don't just say you dismiss, go home. Mm-hmm. It's a process where you retrain them. Those that need to be retired are retired and given other assignments. But you do it over a period where it's orderly.
You take into account that people have committed their lives to this, but you can do it. Other countries have done it. In the long run, that is a far better choice than to have this albatross on our necks over the next how many years? Because the money you're losing now, 15% of your budget going to the National Army and higher education getting about 5%. How are you going to create the jobs? How are you going to create the opportunities for young people if they're not properly trained? So if you do a cost-benefit analysis, it's far better off over the long term to cut your losses. Do it in a systematic way, do it deliberately, retrain them, but downsize the army. We can do without the military.
Do you think it's political that any politician would not...
Well, that's why I say he should announce he's not running. If you're not running, you can make those tough choices. But if you're running, you're counting votes. And this is the problem he finds himself. That's why the coalition agreement said you wouldn't run, because they understood that fundamental reforms will require tough choices. And some of those choices may well include downsizing. You need to downsize. It's painful over the short term, but over the long term, you will see the benefits for the society as a whole.
So one thing that the country faces is the backway syndrome. Gambians, a lot of youths are over. I think Gambia is one of the biggest countries that have its youths going through the backway journey. And last week, 2 weeks ago, we had over 62 people killed in the river and over 40 people not accounted for up to now. I think this is the biggest disaster our country has faced as a nation. And what do you think government should do to stop this serious problem?
Well, certainly interdiction over the immediately will help to make sure that they don't come here and fill up their boats and take these young men and women included in these journeys. But that's just a band-aid solution. The long-term solution is to create opportunities for them and retraining. The entire educational system has to be revamped. I mean, starting from kindergarten up to the universities. There has been so much damage done. So much of what we do, there's no critical thinking skills being taught at schools. I mentioned that in my address. So we have to do a total revamp of the educational system. And that's going to take a while, but over the short term, the solutions are create job opportunities, worker retraining, get those young people engaged in productive work, even in the public or private sectors, engage companies to help. But if you see the misallocation of resources, the President's office having such a significant amount in budgetary funds, what for? I mean, those funds could be utilized to help the youth and engage in productive activity. So funds are being misallocated. It's not that they're not there. It's the priorities are warped.
So, I know when this happened, the president was on a tour, and a lot of people criticized him for continuing with the tour. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I think it showed lack of sensitivity. I mean, when a tragedy like that happens, most sensible people will cut short their visit and address the nation. It took him a while to do that, and I think that was unfortunate. I don't know who's giving him political advice, but they're doing a poor job.
You seem to be very critical of this government. Well,
there's a lot to criticize. I mean, there have been a lot of progress made, but we could have done better. And that is one of the things you realize, that if you look at what has happened the last 30 years, much of it was self-inflicted. We seem to be shooting ourselves in the foot.
And keeping quiet
every
about
incident, every episode, and the next. So it's time to be more forthright and speak directly to the problems we face.
And you recently opened a media house, The Chronicle. Why? From a real estate owner now to a media. Why? Why the media? Why? Some of us were scared when when Chronicle came and said, "Wow, okay." So
I'm interested in public affairs. Yes, business is what I do, but I'm public spirited. I'm civic minded. I want to know what's going on. I'm interested in policy. I want to influence policy in the right direction. And I've looked at the media landscape and think, well, there is a contribution that we can make to deal with serious news and not just politics. I know that there is too much focus on politics, perhaps, to the exclusion of stories dealing with the daily lives of Gambians across the provinces, not just in Banjul or what's happening, what Barrow said today or what UDP said today. That's not the whole thing that's happening in the country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other news. There are businesses being formed, there are young people starting businesses, there are issues of health, there are issues of worker retraining, there are issues of childcare, all of these things. I mean, there are tons and tons of stories that are not being told. And when I look at the media landscape, sometimes I feel they're not covering those. So if you want to do something, you have the means to do something about it. That's the motivation. It isn't just for political purposes.
For those who say you're trying to reposition yourself for political reasons, that's why you set up the Chronicle, what would you say to them?
Well, I know that they've even said that Alaji resigned because we are
forming a political party. Are you forming a political party?
I don't know. Are we? No.
Are we?
No. I don't think we're forming a political. Well, don't we have enough political parties already?
Well, we still have more coming up as well.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The more, the merrier.
Yeah.
I'm a citizen. I will be involved in politics. Like I often say, whether you're involved in politics, politics is involved in you, because the decisions that are made will affect you directly or indirectly, whether you're involved. So you might as well be involved and help influence policy in the right direction. So I will be involved in politics. There's no doubt about that.
But are you thinking of setting up a party?
Well, it doesn't have to entail setting up a party. I think there are enough parties that one can look at and hopefully join or try to influence in this or that direction. I'm more interested in policy than party. If I could support a party's position on this issue, one party's position on that issue. What is important is to develop a core group of parties or politicians or policymakers that are looking at things in a progressive manner. That is my major interest, rather than joining one party or another. What we need to look at is specific policies. How do we advance job creation? What are the avenues for creating more housing? How do we revamp our schools? What are we going to do in human capital training? What development model should we use? I mean, these are all pertinent things that we ought to be discussing across party lines. One of the frustrating things in Gambia is that you don't see a lot of inter-party collaboration.
No.
I mean, everybody is in his own silo.
Yeah.
You're UDP, you're UDP, you're DOI, you're DOI.
Yeah.
I mean, these policies are not party-based. I mean, you can follow your own party, but still come together on commonalities and advance an agenda for the nation. Hopefully we can do that.
But are you surprised that things have really changed in this country now, especially when it comes to people speaking up and voters being really aware? Because yesterday when I listened to some of the people, especially the older folks, how they were concerned about the rise on the price of food, how they were concerned about electricity and others. You never had ordinary folks talking about this before, but now with the new Gambia, everybody is so...
Everybody is, well, the expectations are high that the government will deliver. I don't blame the government entirely for that. I mean, these things are, some of it are not controlled by the government. Commodity prices go up.
Yeah.
Fuel prices go up. It's not directly related to the government. But there is a lot the government can do about the resources it has control over in terms of getting optimal allocation. It is the misallocation of resources that people see that is making them mad.
Yeah.
They see a lot of new cars, a lot of traveling, a lot of fancy appointments over individuals who are not productive. They're really not doing anything. And endless meetings at State House for what?
Because the president is also a politician.
Well, this is what I'm saying. if you're running for re-election,
yeah.
you tend to ignore some of these problems. Had Barrow advanced the agenda of the MOU and said, I'm not running, I'm focusing on what I was elected to do, 3 years, focus like a laser on the reform agenda, bring people whose interest is to advise you how to execute that. I think Gambians would have given him 2 extra years until you're doing a good job. But if you tell people that whether you like it or not, I'm going to be here for 5 years when you pledged to be here for 3 years, what do you expect? You're inflaming the public, and that's what he's done.
Yeah, and that is what is bringing
that is, yeah. I think he has created a toxic atmosphere. And we need to de-escalate the rhetoric, because you've heard about these insults at political rallies, etc. And you have the president there appearing to condone that sort of behavior. I think one of the things you do as president is you elevate the discussion. You have a certain bearing and respect for the office that you don't descend into that level of invective and public display.
And of course, talking about insult, there was a law that they wanted to take to the assembly, but the public outcry, obviously, they withdrew. But today, the Justice Minister did present the Access to Information Bill at the National Assembly, which is a welcoming thing for us in the media. But also, there's still a bill that us, the media practitioners, are not comfortable with, and the Justice Ministry will table that to the National Assembly. So there are some gains, but there are also some things that are really...
It's a work in progress. I mean, I started a newspaper and I had to somehow post a bond. Now, why would I have to post a bond? Those are the existing laws in the books. There was no reason why they couldn't have abolished those laws while they work on new ones.
Especially when they wanted to change the vice presidency age limit, they did that because that was priority.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They were very selective in changing just the laws that serve their purpose, not the laws that serve the purpose of the Gambian citizens. And you cannot be more cynical than that. And that was very unfortunate.
Well, we hope the National Assembly will look at the interests of the people and pass the laws that are in line. We have good National Assembly members, most of them that look beyond party lines.
I think there is a core group that has been working together, I think, largely in a very progressive, harmonious manner to change and to scrutinize the budget and to do other things. So there are some bright lights there, but I think the scrutiny needs to be more intense. It needs to be widened, and I think they need a lot of staff to help them write laws and to help them analyze bills, fiscal notes, and to help them be able to really be an appropriate check to executive overreach.
And of course, the media also has a role to play in that. As a media owner, what do you think the media should be doing to hold the government accountable?
Well, the media training is important. As you know, 2 decades of repression has decimated the media. A lot of good journalists left the country. Others decided to do something else. Now we are in a rebuilding phase. And a lot of new people are coming into the media landscape, but they need training. We need people who can carry in-depth investigative journalism, and that takes skills. It's not something that you do on a flash. It has to be something that is ongoing. You have to do a lot of background work. You have to know a lot about the policies you investigate. So that is coming, and that's one of the things that I think the Chronicle wants to pioneer.
Wow. And finally, before we go, I know we have talked about real estate, but are you in any way thinking about establishing something here? And because we have a lot of real estate companies in the country, but the major, the biggest challenge is providing low-income housing to people like us, because you know.
But you're not low income, though.
I am low income, so I'm not able to afford all those houses that they're building. So,
well, I
yes,
think
especially teachers, nurses, and soldiers, and all the civil servants.
I think the government can play a role in that. The good scheme they had with Social Security, I think, was a good framework.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jammeh decimated that with the plundering he's done to the Social Security Fund. There are other ideas, perhaps, that can be utilized that have been successful in other countries. In the US, for example, tax credits being part of that. So there are avenues for helping to create that. And hopefully we can work and contribute to that.
Oh. Thank you so much, Mr. Njie. And what's your
abroad and want to build your dream home in the Gambia without risking your funds and family ties? Do you want a household name that is trustworthy and efficient? A name that will continue to give you updates on the project from the beginning to the very end with videos and pictures? If your answer is yes, then worry no more. Boss Construction and Asset Management is here for you. If you live outside the Gambia and want to build your dream home, then this is ideal for you. Just reach out to Boss Construction and let's start building the dream home into a reality. With Boss Construction, the difference is clear. We give you value for money. Some of our services includes the following: construction management, building equipment rentals, rent management, purchase and leasing, asset management, and many more. For more information, please contact 282-4945. Better still, send us an email, bossgambia@gmail.com, or you can also visit our website on www.bossgambia.com. Boss Construction, a name you can trust. Boss Construction and Asset Management, keeping families together.
No lañ def ñoo ñëw ak yéen rek Skincare Plus nara jàkkaarloo ak yéen waxtaan ak yéen tuuti rek si suñu tube suñu baax emuñ rek ci ay diw waaye comme ni ngeen ko xamee rek dañoo yëngu ci ay tube te yënguwuñ nag si just any tube suñ tube bu nekk 5-star Jesna la 5-star Jesna mooy Jesna bi gën a pire moom la ñoo tube palmaan bi gën a fort moom la ñoo liggéeyee ñun rek si tube dara du doy day des not only dañoo tube but bu la neexee ñu tuubal la ba pare nag ñawal la. We're not all about skin. We are skin, care, and the plus. And the plus does come in so many different ways.